Hey guys, so it's my pleasure to introduce to you today Brett Veinotte. He's a New Hampshire native who has worked in the greater New England area in the field of education. He's been a teacher and currently is a partner in a company that provides educational consulting services. So more importantly though, he is the producer of the School Sucks podcast, which is a program that addresses, I think, the most critical issue that we face today on the road to the free and voluntary society. This insanity, this absurd notion that education has anything whatsoever to do with running our children through these meat-grinding prison indoctrination torture camps they call schools, where they're segregated by age and taught to obey arbitrary authority, where their curiosity, their creativity, their intelligence, their genius is sucked out of them on a daily basis. I encourage you all to listen to School Sucks podcast. Give it to your friends, your family, any children you have in your life. The topics covered there will help them to survive the process of growing up in this world. Give them the questions they need to ask the adults in their lives. And hopefully they'll be able to survive with their minds and their spirits intact. Ladies and gentlemen, the oh so incredibly sexy and always classy Brett Veinotte.
Thanks, Jason. And of course, for the introduction and for everything you do for the show and all the awesome stuff you do related to the Liberty Movement. It's greatly appreciated. And Jason pretty much did my speech for me, though. That was pretty much it. So the creativity, conformity, sexy, those are all my notes. So I'll take questions. But I thought it would be good. I assume that a lot of people are somewhat familiar with the show, but I thought in the event that some here are not, it would be worth going over some of the details. First the tone and the approach. I like to think that at the core of the show, there's a pretty solid base of about 10 years of experience that I've had in education, and some additional research and evidence that's mixed into the presentation. I also like to think that around that core, it's kind of a soft and fluffy coating. In other words, I really, really hope that the show is accessible to the target audience, which is young people, either students who are in the public schools right now or in private schools, as we know private schools are not too much different, or recent graduates whose minds are still pretty full of that poison. So I know that they have a real thirst for entertainment, so that's always been a kind of a drive of the show. But the podcast itself, the audio, is really, as I imagine it, it's really just the audio piece of what I envision as a much, much larger project. And obviously, I'm grateful to be speaking here today. But when I think about what my ambition is for this, and then I look at like what we already have done, or everything we've seen to do so far, it kind of feels like to use a movie comparison, like the point in the mid-'70s where somebody wrote down on a piece of paper idea, ongoing war in space between galactic empire and group of rebels. Some people have magic powers, working some puppets, right? And obviously, you see that that is the starting point and where that went. Now, I'm not comparing School Sucks podcast to Star Wars. People will always say, Brett, you compare everything to some nerdy movie. But I'm just saying, as far as scope is concerned, as far as like where I would want this to go, I really feel like it's very, very much at the beginning. And so that's the kind of the presentation. But one of my greatest motivations behind doing this, I think I would explain it like this. I studied history, I taught history, I got into politics, and for years and years and years, the more I looked at this stuff, nothing seemed to really make any sense. There didn't seem to be any consistency. And then a few years back, when I started to become aware of the philosophy of liberty and the non-aggression principle,
I was excited about this, and I wanted to share these ideas with the people first that I cared about, the people that I had the best relationships with. And, I found that the response was pretty negative to the idea of the philosophy. I was really surprised because it seemed like after everything I had done and then found this, it was like, oh, this is obviously. But the ridicule, the outrage, the indignation, the discouragement that I felt when I started to present these ideas was at times overwhelming. And, I often wondered if I had tried to do that in a different time, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, whenever, if I would have retreated. If when I was met with that kind of resistance, in another time, that I didn't have readily available all of these resources for information and communication and networking and connecting with people and sharing ideas, would I have retreated? Would I have gone back to someplace safe and socially acceptable? And it also kind of begs the question too, like as all throughout history, like how many times has this happened? Like how many people have by themselves come up with some idea that was incredibly innovative or potentially revolutionary or stood to like push everything forward, but it was just crushed under the weight of conventional wisdom in the time and the place where they were, the dogma, the popular mythology. And even though I've always thought that I had a fair amount of confidence in my intellect and my ability to express my beliefs and positions and then to defend those positions if necessary, I've always wondered that, like, would I have just shrunk away from all this? Because it seemed to the first group of people that I presented it to, family, friends, and colleagues, to just be crazy and not a good idea at all. Don't go down that road. But to have the encouragement of Free Talk Live, Free Domain Radio, the Free State Project, Wes Bertrand's work, the Complete Liberty, where people are saying, no, you've got it. Violence is wrong. Keep going. You're good. I often worry about that. And, the idea all throughout history, I think, has been different things. Maybe 2,000 years ago, somebody, got together with some kind of social situation, said, I'm really getting into the science stuff. I'm starting to think maybe the Earth isn't like a flat plane that the entire universe is spinning around. Maybe a little bit later on, it was, that story about that woman who was made out of that guy's rib that one time? Maybe that wasn't true. Later on, maybe slavery isn't the best thing to base an entire economy on, right up to the present day where, maybe violence and aggression and predation and threats and theft is not how an entire society should run. But the idea that school sucks now is easy. It's such an easy idea to bring to people when your target audience is students. School's already done all of the work for me, pretty much. And I think that's worth pointing out that this has been, since I can remember, since I graduated from high school, 15 years ago, one of the most common catchphrases and adolescent slogans available. And maybe it's driven by a number of other realizations, suspicions, or feelings about their education. But too often, I think it exists only as, a quiet mumbling at the end of the day, today as an anonymous blog post, or even completely in silence as a thought. And really the goal of the show and the project is to take that idea, that sentiment, and project it outward, to amplify it, to prevent young people who are starting to get it, or at least suspect it, from retreating back to convention and back to safety and back to what they're being told is right and socially acceptable. but also to illustrate the real truth and power of that statement.